let me introduce our speaker today. It's my pleasure to introduce Congressman Tom OHalleran. Tom is running for office. He's running for re-election in the new Congressional District 2, which is an enormous rural district that goes all the way from southern Arizona. It goes up through Flagstaff and Prescott, and it continues all the way to the northern border of the state. And he's in a tough race against a Trump-endorsed candidate in a new district, which, thanks to redistricting, now leans Republican. Tom is a former police officer, business owner, and family man. Tom previously served in the Arizona State Senate and House as a Republican from 2001 to 2009, and then he saw the light. He came over and left the dark side of the Republican Party and is now running as a Democrat. And he left because he disagreed with how the party handled education, water, and child welfare issues. And with that, Tom, the floor is yours. Tell us what's going on in your race.
Well, good morning, everybody, or early afternoon, I should say now. I hope everybody's doing well. And I first want to thank everybody for all the efforts they put in, whether it's for me or other Democrats over the years, to make sure that we have a voice in the legislative process, whether here in Arizona or nationally, and get good people elected. I would say that my race right now is a toss-up. I'm currently in the current district that I've been in for the last 6 years is a Republican +3 district. The new one is a Republican +6. Nate Silver has it as a toss-up. Some of the other groups also have it close to being a toss-up. And it's a district that means a lot to the future of the majority of the House of Representatives. Nate Silver does a model of all districts in the country. And my district is right up there on the top. So if we can win that district according to the model, the outcome would mean that we would have a 50% chance of keeping our majority. So a toss-up. If I were to lose the district, it would be a 14% chance of keeping the majority. That's how important this race is. And there are other races across the country have varying degrees of percentages, but this is the highest percentage of winning and also the lowest percentage of being able to maintain. So this is serious business, and we're taking it very seriously. Our opponent is a person that he early on in the process, he decided that a woman's right to choose is not something he believes in, even for rape, incest, health of the mother. And he has yet to come out and identify his position on the archaic law in Arizona that they're trying to push from the 1800s. And I would love to see him do that. I think he owes it to the people in the new district to identify clearly just how radical he is. And he is radical. He doesn't come out very much other than to Republican events. He did not go to a debate with me on PBS. He did not respond to the questions that were asked by the Arizona Republic. He did not respond to the questions, the Daily Sun up in Flagstaff. So I've never met the gentleman yet. Usually at this point, you would have met somebody and been able to have discussions with them in a public environment, but that just hasn't been the case so far. Obviously, since he's endorsed by Trump, that means just off the bat, he believes that Trump is the person to be able to be president of the United States, and has spoken tremendously on the fact that the election had been stolen, in spite of the preponderance of evidence across this nation by both Republicans and Democrat judges, elected officials, and I don't understand how people still go down that road, but they do. And they're entitled to as Americans, but it's not very healthy for our country. That's where it is with my opponent. I wish I knew a little bit more about him, but it's hard to find out information. and he did serve in the military, and we honor all of our veterans. But he also, this is the political environment that we're in now, one where you need to have transparency. You need to be out in front of the people that you serve, and you need to be able to understand the different values that different groups have, because you don't just serve one part. And by the way, just so everybody on the Democratic side knows how he feels about Democrats, you are all demons. That is not the best way to bring our country back together. My philosophy has always been to work with people, not against people, especially when it comes to trying to find common ground and move our country together for our children's future, our family's future, and the future of our safety and our freedom. And so I just don't understand fellow Americans that feel that the other side, whichever side, are demons. So that's kind of the take on him, and the race. It's going to be tough. I can use all the help I can get. I know there's a tough race down in Tucson too. Christine is a solid candidate, well-rounded, and I think she'd be a good candidate, as are almost everyone, not almost, all of our candidates are outstanding candidates, especially when you put them up against the group on the Republican side that's running against us. I mean, it's national news, the radical agenda of the top 5 people running in the ticket on their side. So it'll be a continuing interesting process.
Tom, can you tell us a little bit about some of the positions you've taken in public issues? I know one of your primary concerns is water rights and what's going to happen when they, at least in southern Arizona here, they're going to cut our water supply by 21%.
Well, they're going to cut it by 21% across Arizona, anybody that's on CAP. And we've been working on that now for many, many years. And not just what the current crisis is about, but we've had questions about how the Bureau of Reclamation has managed the river and the law of the river for quite some time. Under current circumstances, we have contacted the Bureau a few times, asked them about how the mistake was made that there was over 460,000 acre feet of water that wasn't in the lakes because of sedimentation that they didn't know about. We talked to them about the runoff from this from 2021 when all of a sudden they had projected average to above average runoff, and it came in at 20%. They understood how much runoff there should have been, but the conditions of the soil and the forests up in the upper basin, Colorado area and Wyoming and so forth. And in short, we've put letters into on issues to make sure that California understands that this is a crisis also, and that California has chosen, and Governor of California had indicated clearly that Californians really don't have to worry because it's going to be 2040 before they lose even 10% of the water if this continues on. And that is just not the appropriate way to look at a situation where we need to keep water behind the dams, not only for agriculture, not only for residential usage, not only for municipal and industrial purposes, but for the purpose of maintaining our hydroelectric power and for the purposes of making sure we have the ability to sustain as long as possible. And Arizona's been doing that, although I believe a little bit late also. In 2005, I had a bill when I was in the legislature to require a statewide drought management plan, a statewide conservation plan, and a statewide water plan. We have the groundwater code, but it's about the plan and how to get to where we have the water necessary in the long term. And this state has been one that has been in the forefront of addressing codes and things like that, but we have not been in the forefront of with a vision towards the future. And that's what we have to have as we move forward. I would caution people, I not caution, but I identify that down in the Tucson area, luckily you do have a fairly good aquifer down that way, but we don't want to live off of aquifers. They're finite, and they do not lead us to the longer term process. In Congress, over this last year or two, we have identified funding for augmentation purposes in Western states. We just put out the Inflation Adjustment Act, and that act was very clear that there was $4 billion for Western water. In a previous bill, we put water funding in there also of over $5 billion. So the American Rescue Plan Act, there's too many acts here. American Rescue Plan Act, and that there's money that was put in there for that also, along with the infrastructure bill. So we have seen the issue, but we should have seen this long before. As I said, I've been involved with water for a long time, and I've taken an aggressive approach and a visionary approach over that period of time. And there was just the bill I talked about earlier about the 3 items as far as getting those into law. It took me 3 years in Arizona to do that. And Arizona at that point in time had been a state almost 100 years. And we still hadn't had a drought management plan or conservation plan. You know, these are the issues that as we look into the future, whether it's for Arizona, the Southwest, or all of America, because all of America is undergoing these changes. And climate change is one of those issues that is compounding the issue at a much greater level. In fact, we had discussions with the Bureau of Reclamation about their model back in the early part of the last decade, not the last decade, the last decade. No, the decade before, first part of this century. And they had not at that point in time been modeling on the Colorado River for the amount of water there based on any of the climate scenarios. We're not in the model. Well, now they're in the model. And when they first got in the model, we found that the river was losing 9% of its water to evaporation and transpiration. And now it's up in the high teens and climbing. And so, and now the entire country is at risk of continuing that. And one of the most important elements of that is our watersheds. You know, I currently represent all or parts of every national forest in the state of Arizona. And we've had too many fires. We've had too many springs go dry. The underlying issue there has to be that we have to do a better job. And that's what the infrastructure bill did and the American Rescue Plan. We now have money coming in over the next 5 years to get our forest in a more manageable process, because most of those forests were developed as watersheds for the people of Arizona to be able to have water. And there's tremendous amounts of water up there, but that's been declining over the years because of the huge amount of trees that soak it up, but also the riparian habitats and the overgrowth throughout our riparian habitats. And we need them healthy. We need trees there, but the amount of precipitation that gets either down into the forest because of a lot of it lands in the trees because they're so dense, and it goes right back up into the sky, or it's soaked out of the rivers because of the wrong type of vegetation along our rivers from invasive species. So we've been highly involved in this process.
Very good. I want to open the floor for questions. Let's get started with you, Susie. Go ahead and unmute and tell us what's on your mind.
Hi there. Welcome, Tom. It's so good to have you. We kind of lose sight of what's going on in other parts of Arizona because we're so involved in Tucson. But what I want to know is, how would you characterize the people of your district now? Farmers, ranchers, you know, what kind of people do you have? And, you know, how can we help you?
What I picked up, the biggest bulk of it was I lost Oro Valley and Marana and the parts of Tucson that I had. I picked up Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt, and Gold Canyon. And some, I lost a little bit of Casa Grande also, and Eloy. But the area I picked up has a much larger landmass than I've even had before. And I had, up until the recent election up in Alaska, I had the largest democratically held district in the country as far as landmass. We have ranchers and farmers and everybody else throughout the district, but we do have those areas such as Prescott Valley, Prescott, Chino Valley that are growing fast. They have a diverse population. They are, I pick up 2 more tribes, so I'll go up to 14 tribes. It's an area that's going to potentially grow faster because of as Phoenix develops, that northern area of Phoenix, those communities will be much closer to the core industries of Arizona, and that includes, there's a huge plant being developed from a Taiwanese chip builder right along I-17, and they have room for 2 more. Intel has room for 2 more also, and they obviously can afford to buy more land. The CHIPS bill that we put forward was intentional to bring those industries back to America, or to keep those industries here, because at one time we had 40% of the chip making ability in the world, and we dropped down to as low as 12%. That's not in the best interest of America. I know that everybody, they're going to use a lot of water. They're going to be required to recycle that water, but also the type of jobs are high-paying jobs. They're clean energy or clean industry, and it's going to be a process that's going to be developing Arizona into, between those and their satellite industries that have to come with those, develop into a tremendous amount of good economic development for our state. As we've seen over the last 20, 30, 40 years, there's not much that stops people from moving to our state. We have to grow smarter. We have to understand our resources. And as we bring in these other industries, hopefully many of them clean industries, that we're going to be able to do something about making sure that we look into the future at a much more aggressive level.
All right, Mike Bryan has his hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Larry. So we have a question right at the back of the top of the chat. Robert Bulacek would like to know, and frankly, this might be as easily or maybe better answered by your campaign manager, Joanna, but Robert wants to know, of all the campaign techniques, signs, doors, knocking ads, etc., how would you rank them in terms of cost and time effectiveness in getting votes?
I'll give my shot at it and then have Joanna get on. Obviously, media is how you get out to the most people on TV, radio, whatever that media, whatever that source is. And a lot of money has to be spent. We are not out of the Tucson market. We are the Phoenix market. And Mark Kelly is also out of that market. And so nothing against Mark, but he's going to spend a lot of money to maintain his seat, thankfully. And that cost me a lot of money to buy an ad. So a 30-second ad right now is about $900 for one ad. And so just round that out to 1,000. So for $100,000, I get 100 ads. And that's not much in a large marketplace like Phoenix. And so you have to use a variety of ways of addressing those things. And to me, the most important thing also is to be out with people. I have a history of doing that. We have a town hall tonight. We have town hall later on in the week. And getting out there and getting my story told, making sure that the newspapers get our press releases, get our op-eds and everything else like that. But it's a constant process. Phone banking, I can tell you, I know the Tucson area has always been there for those core areas of phone banking and being able to address door knocking and just getting the word out in general, texting in today's marketplace and stuff. One of the things I'll tell you, though, we talked a little bit about it before the show, but my first race for Congress, I won by 8% in a Republican +3 district. The second one, I won for it by 7%, same district. The third one, now this is when the pandemic occurred, I won by 3.5%. And what didn't happen then was people didn't go out and go door to door, understandable. We did not have a lot of people sitting on large rooms and massively trying to get phone calls done, and texting wasn't as big back then either. But now it's different. And so as these races tighten up, and we have tight races all over the country, the core is going to be still getting people to the polls. And the best way to get people to the polls is to talk to friends and family and workmates and everything else, but also to be there on a constant basis, reaching out to the rest of the public. And that's something that one person can't do or a small team can't do. It takes us all, and it's critical. Joanna?
So I'll make it quick because I know there's a few other questions, but in a district that is almost 60% of the state and close to 60,000, I think it's like 59,000 square miles, 14 Native American tribes, very rural. And as Tom mentioned earlier, we have just a large geographical area. We have to employ different tactics. So for example, in sovereign lands, we have to use a different approach to organizing than we would use in Flagstaff or in Prescott, because, Native Americans just don't like people coming to their door, and especially people who they don't trust and don't know. We're using a variety of different techniques, but right now is the time to get out the vote. So we're doing a lot of door knocking. And of course, Tom mentioned going up on TV, and ads are extremely expensive right now because of the gubernatorial race and the Senate race. So with that said, we're using everything. Every touch point counts, and any support you can provide would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I got a follow-up of my own. Tom, I am calling back quite a ways here, but when I ran Drinking Liberally, I sent out invitations to all the Republican caucus in the Arizona Ledge. And at that time, you were a Republican in the Arizona Ledge, and you and Pete Hirschberger were the only two who took me up on it and came and spoke to Drinking Liberally. And I still give you props for that. But from that perspective of somebody who's seen the party change, the Republican Party change over the years, can you tell us how that has affected you and what your experience of that change in your old party, the Republicans, has looked like from your perspective?
Well, when I left the party, I lost my primary, but then I tried to work within it, and it became impossible on education, healthcare issues, natural resource issues on a consistent basis. And I just couldn't get anywhere. And so ended up when the Democrats came to me, I looked around and identified, I have a lot of good Republican friends. They're not bad people. But the leadership of the party, I think, was just taking the party and the country in the wrong direction. And I believe that in most cases is still the case. I'll always say, I haven't lost any of my friends that were Republicans, but I have been able to not understand, and I'll give you a good example. Right now, the infrastructure bill was a bipartisan bill in Congress, and not a huge infrastructure bill. I mean, there were just enough to say, yes, we did have a bipartisan bill. And not one Republican in Arizona who was in Congress voted for that bill. American Rescue Plan, another bill, not one of them voted for the bill. The CHIPS Act, not one of them voted for the bill. Where I'm heading, and there's more, but where I'm heading with this is we have to invest in our country. We have to look into the future of our country. Our country can't be just about politics. It has to be about willing to work with people. And I'm on the problem solvers. I'm the only bipartisan group in Congress, and we work together. Do we agree all the time? No. Do we yell and scream at one another? Never. Because we respect one another and respect the fact that you're entitled as an American to have a different policy or values, but we're not entitled to try to tear our country apart. And that's what I've learned, that you know, the perception out there is one in general, but I work with a lot of good, decent Democrats and a lot of Democrats and Republicans in order to find that common ground. It's getting harder and harder to do. And a lot of that has to do with what I said earlier about who my opponent is looking up to, actually looking up to Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And that he looks at his fellow Americans as demons, the Democrats. I don't care if he doesn't like us, but to demonize us in a way that says that we're not allowed to have our voices also heard, and obviously making it much harder for him to be able to come across and be able to work with the other side of the aisle. And I think that's the way we're going to try to bring back America and bind us together some way, to be able to understand that one side or the other is never going to get all it wants. We have to find common ground. And when we do, we will do a lot of things better. One of those is in an infrastructure bill that came 20 years late because of this. We could have gotten so much more done. And we're still lacking the basic infrastructure that we need to compete in the world. Where we do come together, you know, I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. At times we have 50 bills that come out of that committee without one person having to vote, because we all agree on those bills. So they can come out unanimously. You know, where they go from there, that's another problem, because they go through this whole leadership battle as far as who has the most power. But we can work through those issues in committee, and we got to continue to try to do that for the betterment of our country and the betterment of our children's future and our family's future. But it's sad to see there's extremes on both ends of both parties. I see the one extreme on our party is our people that at heart really, really care about the future of our country and our neighbors. And on the other side, I think there are many that do, but there are also the people that just, as I said before, demonize other Americans. And I just don't see there's any room for, within a free society, to be doing that by elected officials.
Thanks, Tom.
Let's see, we have Lillian Fox with her hand up, and I invite other people to ask questions as well. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lillian, and ask away.
You know, to me, Tom, it sounds like you really represent all of Arizona. You're not just representing your districts or your district, and that we really need you. I'm interested in who's funding your opponent and how well funded is he? And then could your campaign person list the link on your on the chat so we can contribute to you, because we need you.
Well, thank you very much. And I bet you that's what she's doing right now, if I know her well. He's not getting a lot of funding in the state, a lot of funding from around the country. He has not raised the type of funds that we have himself, but he's getting a huge amount of money from the Republican Party, and both from their leadership in the House and through members of the House, and then also he'll be getting it from we have the House Majority PAC. They have the Republican answer to that. I'm very happy, first of all, to see that we're going to try to do away with dark money here in Arizona. But there is a huge amount of money, dark money out there, where all of us can give. Well, the most you and I could give to any candidate is about $5,800. And then, but you have to report it with your name, your address, your employer, and everything else. And we have people out there that could give tens of millions, hundreds of millions, $1 billion if they wanted to, and not even be recognized because they go through this 504 process. And those are those super PACs that they just make this system a terrible system right now. And I think and Citizens United, we should help them out as much as we can too, to be able to overcome what I think is a Supreme Court decision that was just way out of place, and it's hurting our country.
Let's turn to Susie Anderson, who has her hand up. Go ahead, Susie.
Hi there again. You said 14 tribes. Can you tell us what tribes you have in your district, and are any of them more apt to vote than others?
Well, they're all the tribes in this day and age are voting, and they're voting aggressively, and they're part of my base, and I'll explain in a minute why that is. When we did the infrastructure bill and the American Rescue Plan, we purposely allowed for monies to be able to go directly to tribes, and that has allowed the tribes to get direct money for broadband. And we also, in rural areas and in underserved areas within urban areas where there's a lot of poverty. So $64 billion is going into those areas for broadband across our entire nation. And the state of Arizona will end up getting somewhere in the area of probably around 5 to 6 billion. We've already built it up from Phoenix to Flagstaff, and we've worked with the governor's office, but the governor made it appear that this was state money. It's all federal money, and there's a line going down I-19 from Tucson down to the border. There's one going along the I-40 corridor all the way from Flagstaff to California, but then we're working on one from Flagstaff to New Mexico, and then we're going to go up state routes. And the intent is to have every community either have fiber optics, and that's what's being buried in the ground along our interstates and state highways, so that the education, the healthcare, and the security, public safety, and economic development throughout our state can be brought to a higher level. So hopefully that, and healthcare, I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, as I said, we addressed Indian Health Services and Medicaid throughout America. So we have a lot to do in this state, and have done it and helped the tribes in those areas and rural America, and trying to save as many hospitals as we can. And we've developed more and more ability of our community health centers to address those issues as we move along. I could go on, but the things that have been done in the last year under the Biden administration, with the help of Congress, and sometimes with the lead of Congress, we've got a great relationship to develop a better America now and into the future. Things that have been on the waiting and never had to wait if we had just been able to work together and or not put obstruction bills in the way of progress for our country and the people of our country.
Tom, I've got a question for you. Turning back to water, you had mentioned that, in fact, I've seen the release where you've condemned the land department of the state of Arizona for leasing land out to the Saudi Arabians who use our groundwater plant alfalfa, which uses lots of water, and then they ship it off to Saudi Arabia for their fancy horses and cattle. Is that something, as a congressman, you can do something about?
Well, the state groundwater code is unless it affects a one of the surface waters in the state. Most of it goes through the state itself to address that, but I know the state's doing that. You know, that press release you talked about, you know, that's down in southern Arizona. It's the Wilcox area, and I don't understand how we can lease that much land, 3,400 acres, to a company in Saudi Arabia, and they are taking out of the ground up to 1.1 or 1.2 billion gallons of water on a yearly basis at a critical time in our state's future, and still be allowed to do this. It's been brought up by myself. It's been Chris Mays has brought it up and in her discussions, and has sent letters like I have, and wants to do something about it immediately. But we do have a groundwater code that allows groundwater pumping under industrial purposes to be able to do that. And you would have to watch it very closely on how you would address that, so that other farmers, our farmers here in our country, would not be impacted. And they at least are moving, and we're working with them to move towards a more conservation on the lands. And we've been doing this through the ability to highlight our different, you know, whether it's drip irrigation or low water usage plants. We just, in fact, got a grant for the U of A and low water usage rubber plant that I think that's $32 million to start to be able. It hardly uses any water, and the tire companies want to be able to use it, and so hopefully that will help with especially down in areas like Pinal County. But the overriding issue here is that we have to be much more judicious on how we address our water issues. And again, I've tried to be much more visionary than I don't like crisis issues. I think we have to look into the future and anticipate things more and take into account the real issues that are facing us and not hope they go away. They usually don't go away. They usually become much more costly and much more destructive.
All right, Paul Stapleton Smith has his hand up. Go ahead, Paul, and unmute yourself.
Congressman OHalleran, thank you for all of the work, all of the steadfast and innovative work that you've done for us all this time. Regarding that issue with the water in the Saudis, as this is getting greater prominence, would you direct us, a bunch of organizers on this call, that in how we might be able to join in solidarity with our farmers, our own residential farmers, if you will, right, on Arizona-based farmers, to get some solidarity in fighting this, if you will, because I haven't met a single voter in Arizona who says, "Oh, this is a good idea to let Saudi Arabia or an international, you know, another international corporation come in and just suck our water out." What would you suggest to us? And again, thank you so much for everything you do for us.
Well, thank you very much. By the way, the State Land Department every year gets $86,000 for that lease. So that's not exactly the amount of money that you would think that you should be able to basically grow a plant. Alfalfa is the plant, six acre feet of water a year per acre, and ship basically the water that grew it across over to Saudi Arabia. So I just don't get it. But having said that, we will put on the chat, Joanna will put on the chat the information that we can get to you or send it to the State Land Department. They are the ones that lease the land. It's for a good purpose usually. It's for the purpose of going back into our schools and stuff. But that's, you know, this is kind of, I just don't understand it. They haven't come up with an explanation to myself, to Chris Mays, to the people of Arizona. And we're going to continue to press, but it would help if other people started to send letters and get the issue recognized on a larger basis. Because, you know, the squeaky wheel is something. I don't represent that area, or else I'd be able to do a lot more. We will continue to go down a path of trying to get reason before the people that enforce these laws. But it's both the State Land Department and the Arizona Department of Water Resources.
All right, looks like we have one last question from Lillian, and then Tom, I'll ask you to bring our meeting to a close. Go right ahead, Lillian.
One of the things I wondered about, are the farmers afraid when you propose doing more about regulating water in Arizona? Are they afraid that they'll be the first to have their water cut?
Well, they are the first that are getting it cut right now because of the crisis on the Colorado River. And so
right.
What they are doing right now is to go in the direction of trying to find the necessary funding to be able to get drip irrigation. We have a lot of things in place already that will allow us to continue to farm in Arizona. We just have to do it a little, the cost is they pump water out of the ground because of the lack of Central Arizona Project water. As they pump it out of the ground, it goes, you have to pump deeper and deeper and deeper. And it becomes more costly, and land subsidence begins to take place. And that's not a good thing to occur anywhere. I'm not proposing necessarily new laws. I'm proposing that we address these issues in a new way. And there are new ways out there that we can do that and save the farmer money, to save the consumer money, and to be able to make sure that we conserve the resource.